Hello and welcome to another episode of the Horror Ghouls, your favorite podcast for horror movie reviews and discussion. We are the Horror Ghouls. I'm Megan,
Auntie.
and we are gathered here today to get through this thing called life. Shout out to
Yes.
Prince. Surprised we never used that before already, right?
Right, no, we haven't.
I'm always dying to throw that in somewhere. So we are continuing to hang around the 80s with this month's episode. Gonna get right into talking about it. We are doing 1988's cult classic, They Live. It has everything. Weird alien creatures, conspiracy, screenplay by, directed by, music by John Carpenter, who we love, starring
Yes.
Roddy Piper, who you may or may not be familiar with as Roddy Piper from WWE/WWF and WCW. He is considered to be one of the greatest heels of all time. And if you're a non-wrestling person, a heel is a bad guy. Um,
Yes.
that's not all, though. We also have Keith David in this film. If his name isn't ringing a bell, and his face maybe isn't because he looks pretty young in this movie, he's been in so many things. Just to name a few, The Thing, Platoon, Roadhouse, The Quick and the Dead, Armageddon, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. The list goes on and on, including many voiceover credits and popular movies slash shows and video games. So he's all over the place,
Mm.
including, I'm going to do a throwback for you, the cartoon Gargoyles. Do you remember that one?
Yes,
Yes, I used to love that show. It was on like at the perfect time right after school,
it was. I love gargoyles. And it's so
right?
funny because that is probably where I recognize him the most.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, he did even some more recent ones. I think there was like I think The Princess and the Frog he voiced
Okay.
someone in. So he really has a very expansive career. So we love him. And like I said, when I saw him first, I was like, wait, he looks like familiar, but he was so young, like he didn't really have any
Yeah.
facial hair going on too. Um, so yeah. So that's kind of who we're dealing with today, who we're working with, and we're just gonna get into it. You ready?
All right.
All right. So we open with a drifter walking along some train tracks towards LA. This is John Nada, Roddy Piper's character, just to lay out the land for you. His first stop is the unemployment office where he's told there's nothing for him and he hits the bricks. While he's walking through a park, he comes upon a preacher who's doing your typical street preacher stuff like, why do we worship greed? Society is corrupted. He makes a reference to people being owned by something, and
Hmm.
they are all around you.
Mm.
Nada keeps moving as the police show up to kind of break up that gathering, I guess. So soon, and I have every reason to believe this is just the next day, Nada grabs a construction job by approaching the foreman and luckily gets taken on. Now, Roddy, of course, is shirtless in this scene as he's swinging a shovel around. And I'm going to be honest, I am not mad at it. I'm not mad. This was like peak Roddy Piper
Yes,
physicality.
he's in great form in this movie. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I feel like he just had to. Like, he's like, I'll do this scene, but I got to be sweaty and shirtless.
Listen, the
Like,
80s is full of gratuitous nudity. We get this topless shot. We get more topless shots later, but you
yeah,
know.
no,
So here it is.
not mad. Not mad at it one bit. So a man approaches Nada, Frank, so this is Keith David's character, and lets him know if he needs a place to stay, there's a place nearby that has hot food and showers. Nada doesn't answer initially, but winds up following him, and the two become friends, I guess, like acquaintances, but they have a
They're
friendship.
friendly.
Frank and John walk and talk about life's hardships. Nada, we see, is not really a man of too many words, um, but he says he believes in America. He follows the rules. He thinks that that will pay off for him at some point, and everybody goes through hard times, essentially. That's like how he kind of starts off. So they're now in this shanty town, basically, which is just little structures made of tarps and discarded, not even cardboard. It's more substantial than that, but
Yeah. It's
it's
giving Mad Mix. Mad Mix
yeah, a
a little
little bit.
bit.
So they also have some outside bathrooms, and there's a church across the street that helps keep the people fed, and maybe they get donations for clothes, etc., right? Um, we do get a nice little harmonica interlude as we get the view of this area. We also see they actually have an outside TV, which is
Hmm.
interesting.
I'm like, what is that
Um,
hooked up to?
right?
How?
How are they getting power to that television? It starts to get fuzzy, and a weird kind of public access channel comes through talking about how scientists accidentally discovered signals being sent, but it keeps cutting out. So we're hearing just bits and pieces. This man on this public access is saying, like, we are in a repressive society, people are losing their rights, the lower class is expanding, and the TV continues to go in and out with static. The last ideas we hear before it's lost completely is, or are, they are safe as long as they are not discovered, as long as they keep us asleep, which is interesting. And also, if you're living in 2025, doesn't sound too far off. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's very, very similar to
It's a
what
little
we're,
on the nose. Yeah,
yeah, what we're going through now. So, history repeats itself and art imitates life. So,
it sure does. And in this iteration, we get Roddy Piper with no shirt on. So I'm good. So the preacher from earlier is nearby as the signal goes in and out, and at some point he almost seems to be reciting what the man on the TV says, like he's mouthing along with it. But then he heads across the street to the church, escorted by another man, Gilbert. Nada watches this from afar. Like he's kind of like, wonder what that's about, but whatever. So he heads off to work the next day. And as he's going, he runs into Gilbert coming out of the church, and he asks them why he was there at 4 a.m. He's like,
hmm.
what's happening at the church? And Gilbert's like, well, they let us use their kitchen. We have a lot of people to feed, whatever. Nada's spidey senses are like, I don't know about that, but we'll see. We'll see. So the TV signal continues to go in and out with this public access looking channel, but it's not Miss Cleo. Do you remember Miss Cleo from back in the
Yes.
day?
Call me
Call me
now.
now. Yep. I love that. Okay. So
It's not Peter Popoff either, if y'all remember that.
I don't remember
Uncle
that.
Peter Popoff was like, "Put your hands on the screen for my miracle water. I'm gonna heal you
Oh,
through the screen." I used to love him. I would
no,
every
I
time he came
do.
on, I would watch him.
Did you buy any Miracle Water?
No, I didn't. I just used
No.
tap water.
Oh, but there you go. All right, that's something. So, so the TV at this point, it's kind of the same type of ideas, but it's saying we're bred for slavery, and the signal must be shut off at the source because again, we only are getting these little bits and pieces, so we don't have the context. Um, for the second time, though, people watching mention having headaches after being exposed to this channel and like the static. So, Nada again watches Gilbert run across the street to the church, but this time he follows and he takes a look around. He finds a room full of boxes and what kind of looks like a weird chemistry set. On the wall it says, "They live, we sleep."
Mm.
He also sees that choir music, which can be heard from outside, is being piped out of the church, but there's no choir. So there's some kind of like front or facade.
Yeah, because it's weird. Because earlier you just hear people like in the church singing, and it's like, oh,
Yep.
they're just having a good time in the church. All right,
Yeah, they're just
but
meeting for
yeah,
choir practice, like whatever. So we see, though, in the church, what this music is kind of masking is Gilbert, along with a group of people inside, are talking about getting a shipment on the street. But again, we're not getting all the context. They're concerned they're not going to reach enough people. They want to recruit for their mission. And Nada is just poking around in the room behind them and eavesdropping. He goes to sneak out and bumps into the preacher, who is blind. I don't know if that came up before,
no,
who is like feeling Nada's face with his hands, and Nada's like, what is happening right now? And he gets out of there. But the preacher's like, I'm not worried. You're going to be back. I'm not worried about it. So when Nada gets outside, there's a helicopter right overhead, and two of the men run out and put on sunglasses before looking up at it. Frank, across the street, also observes the helicopter and watches as Nada takes a pair of binoculars from someone so he can sit and watch the church. As he watches, Frank comes up and asks what he's up to and reveals, or not reveals, he uncovered tons of boxes and weirdness in the church. He's like, something's going on. What's funny to me about this scene is that they aren't so far away that he needs binoculars. He's so close. He could easily be spotted sitting there staring with binoculars, which I find very comical. Um, it's like the equivalent of like not even a whole block and like a
Yeah,
suburb block too, not a city block. Like it's
it's very
close.
close.
It's very close. So Frank tries to tell Nada whatever's going on in there is none of their business. But Nada says that Gilbert is involved. So he's like, one of our people is in there. Like, shouldn't we know what's happening? Gilbert, at that point, throws boxes in the car and speeds away. Frank, again, just wants to stay in his lane and advises Nada to do the same, but that train has left the station. Nada sits and watches through the night, still from that close distance with those binoculars. The helicopter is back. A few guys run away from the church. A few cars peel out, and some people appear to be fleeing. Um, Gilbert and another man help the preacher back to the shanty town, essentially across the street, as the cops and SWAT roll up on the church and then the shanty town, and they even bring a bulldozer. So they're
Yeah.
making their way through the town. They're tearing down the structures and advancing on people too, which and there doesn't seem to be a reason for any of it.
It's giving LA riots from back in the day.
Yeah,
It's very like it's such a heavy political scene, like seeing this
yeah.
part with all the like you said the SWAT, it's the helicopters and the riot gear and people trying to fight the cops and the cops beating people and it's very
It is heavy, and
heavy.
everyone's just they're minding their business too. Like they're just going about like they're watching TV, they're feeding their families, they're just living their
And
lives as best they can,
you
you
know what?
know?
And I think not for nothing, the people in the shantytown don't necessarily have anything to do with what's happening in the church. And if the police were watching the church like they we think they may have been, they
Yeah.
would have seen that a lot of these people had nothing to do with what was going on in the church. It was a select group of
Nothing.
people,
Yeah.
and we saw those people run out and leave.
Yep. They got out of there before anything. So John, I have John, but I'm gonna always call him Nada. I'm gonna do my best, but sometimes John might sneak in. He kind of first is walking around calmly, just trying to figure out what's happening because he's like, why, what is going on right now? He sees Frank and he calls out to Frank, who decides to like turn and run for his life. So he's out of there. Nada decides finally it's time to get out of Dodge himself. He makes a run for it. As he flees, he takes in the awful things happening around them. The cops are beating up on the preacher, other people from the shantytown hiding and running. Some of them, including Nada, wind up in a room. It's like a safe enough distance away, and they're watching through windows. So the next day, people return to the site to see if they can recover anything, but most everything is gone except for some clothes, and for some reason, the TV. The TV is
Hmm.
still there. And again, how is it being powered?
Right.
We don't know. The
The
church
world's
is
longest extension cord.
the longest one, but also the church is smoking. So they like cratered out the church too. It's still there. That wasn't an accurate description, but Nada goes back to investigate. All the boxes that were in the room are gone, and the wall that said "They live, we sleep" has been painted over. John finds a box left in a secret cubbyhole and takes it, and he leaves the church, walks down an alley and opens it, and he finds just loads of sunglasses. And he's like, what's happening with this? So he hides that box in a trash can in like a dumpster area in
Hmm.
the alley, and he takes a pair for himself. So when he puts them on, he notices that a nearby billboard is different when he puts the glasses on. To the regular eyeball, it looks like an ad for computer. But with the glasses, the billboard says one word: obey. The glasses also see things in black and white, which is interesting. So he continues to walk through LA, noticing that this is the case with all of the signs. A nearby men's apparel store, where the sign actually says "No independent thought," and a sale sign on the business says "Consume." He looks down the street and sees every other sign has a similar message. They say things like conform, submit, watch TV, stay asleep, etc.
And
This,
interestingly enough, the reason why stuff they chose to do the black and white is because they
mhm.
were trying to give you that whole old school propaganda feel. Because if you get a lot
Oh,
of propaganda from like, World War II, probably even World War One,
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of things were black and white. I mean, they definitely had color, but just to give you the contrast between what is real and what's not real as far as the propaganda.
It's very interesting. This story is very well done. So even this next part, which I feel like really super illustrates the point that you're just making, which is interesting because I never knew that. Um, there's a magazine stand and it shows the same thing, but it's interesting because all the magazines are laid out together, so you really get to see kind of a comprehensive picture. Um, none of them say what they appear to say. They say things like surrender, follow, do not question authority, doubt humanity. So everything says something a little different, but similar themes. A man walks over to the magazine stand, and Nada sees that he is not a man at all. This man has a crazy alien face. There's
Hmm.
something skull-like about it and veiny, but
Their
with
eyes are
giant,
bulging.
giant
Yeah.
bugged out eyes. Yeah. When Nada takes his glasses off, he just looks like a man. So he does that a few times with his glasses, with everything as he's taking this in. Nada wanders into a store and sees that again. Some people have this alien face and even body, like you can see when they lift up their hands and stuff. Um, but some people are just regular. But the alien people seem to be living just regular human lives.
Mhm.
On the TV in the store, someone is speaking, some kind of, I'm not sure if it's news or like a political
Yeah.
person. Okay. And through Nada's eyes, we see that the person is an alien too. Nada too is like that figures. Like of course, of
Hmm.
course. A lady alien bumps into him and he says, "It looks like her head fell in the cheese dip in 1957," which is a very weird burn,
It
but okay,
is.
it's a weird burn. But he starts going off in the store, and I actually have this noted. We were just talking about this before. And he goes to a lady nearby that's a person. He's like, "You're okay." Um, but this lady, like the one who bumped into him, he's like, "I put these glasses on and she's real fucking ugly." And he calls her formaldehyde face. Like he's just like
Yes.
he's starting to kind of I feel like he's a pretty stoic guy, but he is starting to unravel a little bit
Yeah.
because everything he thought is different.
Yeah, this is definitely showing his awakening, so to
Yeah.
speak.
And he's freaked out, but he's still doing a good job of remaining stoic to a point. So the cashier says he's going to call the cops, and the alien lady speaks into her watch, saying, "I got one that can see." So now we know these creatures are aware of what's happening. Like they're not like they don't think they're people. You know what I mean? They know that they're different. And they also have a way of communicating with each other or maybe a bigger something
They
behind
all
the
have
scenes.
like fake, like not fake, but they all have Apple Watches before Apple Watches came out.
Basically, basically. So a bunch of other alien people advance on him in the store, and he hears them giving his description into their watches. Nada keeps the glasses on and walks through the town. A cop pops up and pushes him, asking where he got the glasses. The cop is also an alien, and he tells Nada that he is just as ugly to them as they are to him. And Nada is like, that is not possible, right? There are so many good one-liners in this movie delivered by Roddy Piper. There are so many. Um, and we're going to see more as we go along because I feel like a lot of
Yes.
his lines are kind of one-liners. Like he has a few
Yeah. He
that
has
are a
some
few
paragraphs,
lines,
but
but
for the
generally,
most part.
generally it's one-liners. So we get to see some of Roddy's fighting skills in action here for the very first time in this movie as he takes down both the cops that confronted him. One bops him in the head, but he still manages to get away. He takes a shotgun out of the cop's car and I guess a bag of ammo. He had like a duffel bag on him. I assume that's what that is.
Yeah.
Um,
Because he shot the cops first and took
right,
their gun, but then he did open their car, and they just had it was weird because they did have like a gun rack inside of the front seat of the
right, and
car
the
with a
as you
shotgun.
do. Isn't that where
Yeah,
you keep your guns? Like right in
right.
the front seat? Yeah.
Yeah, just build a rack. But yeah, I think it was probably a duffel bag with ammo, but I'm like, we never see him open up a bag and say, "Oh yeah, these are bullets," and like go.
Yeah, well, it's weird because it's like he has the bag in like just one scene for a second, and then he never has
Never
the bag
has it
ever
again.
again.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But whatever. John Carpenter, we trust you. So that's all we do. So more cops pull up on the scene, but he makes his way into a busy bank that is full of more alien people. Again, mixed in with human people. It's not that everyone's an alien, they're just mixed into society. So he stands there taking it all in, and then he smiles and he delivers the famous line, I've come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum. It's a fantastic line. He does a great job.
Yes.
One of the cops fires at him, and he fires back, taking out some aliens in the process. One of them behind him is giving his description into his watch. Nada turns and says, Mama don't like tattletales, and blasts him as well. So good. Makes me laugh.
That's funny.
Yes. Out on the street, he runs into a weird drone thing that is spying on him. And at this point, he's just like, I'm not putting up with this. And he throws out some more one-liners and he takes it out with a shot because he's just like, no. In a nearby parking garage, Nana sneaks up on a lady about to get into her car, because he wants to hitch a ride out of there. He needs to get out of this very busy area. She drives out with him laying in the front seat, and he tells her, just keep driving. He asks if she's married, lives alone, and she tries to lie, but he knows, and he's like, please just don't, just take me to your house. Like,
Well,
just,
let's be honest here. He carjacked her.
oh yeah, no, he did.
He carjacked like we. I don't want it to seem like he was just like, "Hey, can I hitchhike a ride?" No, no. He had two guns and was like, "I need you to just drive,
Drive, lady.
okay?"
That's a fact. So she does take him to her house. Her nosy neighbor, who cracked me up, he was wearing like a bathrobe
Yeah.
out on his like porch. He's super nosy. He's watching as Nada and Holly, we learn, that's her name, go into her 80s chic home where he falls on the floor exhausted. She's obviously freaked out, but he just says he wants quiet. And these sunglasses, they're almost giving him like a high. They're hurting his head. So wearing them a long time is too much. He's ranting and raving about what he's discovered to Holly. He certainly sounds out of his mind if you don't know what's going on. Um, so he's telling her, they're all around us. They've been controlling us. You can only see them with these special glasses. And Holly's like, okay, buddy. That's good.
Yeah, she's like, yeah, I'll put your little glasses on and I'll tell you that I see whatever you see.
Yeah.
So she's like, you're crazy. I'm gonna just tell you what you want to know.
Yeah, I
Okay.
feel like that's kind of a silly thing to do on her part because he's armed too, that you don't want to be like, even if I don't see it, I'm going to tell you I see it. So like that's
But
like
you know what though? She gives me in this moment, she gives me a little bit of I'm a rebellious person. I'm being cautious, but I really, really like don't think you're gonna do anything to me.
yeah,
And so I think that's why she even had that snarky comment because,
I agree.
I
I
wouldn't
just
have acted that way.
I agree with you. I just think it's kind of risky. Is that like a risk you want to take? That's how you want what you want to gamble with? Like,
Yeah, but
I
you
don't
know
know.
what though? I mean, I think it's funny because at this moment, that's why I say at this moment, it seems like she's just kind of, you know, taking her chances.
Yeah, she's like,
But
whatever, buddy. Yeah,
we know from later why she feels how she feels in this scene, or why she's acting the way she's acting in
right.
this scene.
Yeah, definitely. So Nada kind of gives up when she's like, I'm not putting on the glasses, like, because I'm just gonna lie to you. He's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And they sit awkwardly for a bit. He shuts his eyes for a moment, and Holly goes to get a drink, and Nada's like, please don't F with me. Like, just don't do it. But he allows her to do it anyway. Then he kindly apologizes for being in her home, and he tries to strike up a conversation. We learn Holly is an assistant program director for a cable channel, and this interests Nada, and he starts to tell her how these alien things are sending signals through a TV, and while he's getting this out, she wallops him on the back of his head with like a wine bottle, I
So
guess.
yeah,
Yeah. And it sends him flying through the window, and rolling down a hill. Like he is having a very bad day.
That had to be the hardest hit ever because,
To send him through a window,
right, to
like,
send him through a glass window, mind you, I would assume that she's in a high rise. So that window should have been tempered. Should have been
right.
tempered glass, okay?
Yeah.
So to hit him with a bottle hard enough that he flies through a window was wild.
Yeah, she really packs a punch, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
So he is messed up. So he lands at the bottom of the hill and he winds up because it's LA, so there's hills everywhere, right? And he's under a house with stilts, I guess. That's what it appeared to be.
I felt
Um,
like it was a billboard. I had no idea. It could have been a house with stilts, but it was giving me billboards or something.
it could have been either,
Yeah.
certainly. And he winds up there on the side of a hill before ultimately just getting out of there and getting back to town. They do make a point of showing us the sunglasses are still at Holly's. So they make a point of that. We see that Nada gets away. He's limping around because he has gotten messed up. The next day, he returns to the construction site where he gets Frank's attention, and Frank is like, "Sir, you went on a murder rampage. Please leave me alone." Um, so he's like, "I can't help you. Just go away." Nada, back in town, walks past a store displaying tons of TVs in the window, and his picture is all over them. So he is no longer safe anywhere. Like the word is out about Mr. Nada here.
Hmm.
He goes back into the alley where he saw the sunglasses and sees the trash man just came and took everything, which is not good. But he manages to kind of hoist himself into the back of the garbage truck while he searches for his precious box. He's able to find them and is dumped out of the truck and sees Frank standing in the alleyway. He has brought his paycheck, which is very nice of him to do for a murderer, I think.
Yeah.
Nada checks him out with the glasses and sees that he's human and approaches him and tries to put the glasses on him. Frank wants nothing to do with it, and punches him right in the face. He's like, get away from me. The guys get in a very, very extended physical fight because Frank won't put on the glasses.
Yes.
Roddy does a fantastic job in the scene, even if it's just there to showcase his fighting skills. Like it's so extended, it's to the point it gets a little unnecessary, but it's wonderful. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just very long.
It is, yeah, it's a 6 minute fight. We talked recently about a bar scene in Near Dark that was
Ugh,
long.
yeah.
That was like it might not have been 6 minutes, but it was the longest, maybe 3 minutes we ever watched.
Yeah.
And but this is actually 6 minutes, and it was initially it was choreographed by John Carpenter, and he
Love
only
that.
wanted it to be 20 seconds, and Roddy Piper and Keith David were like, nah, we can go longer than that. And so they did a whole 6 minute fight, and John Carpenter was like very impressed. And so he kept all 6 minutes in the movie.
It's good. Like it's really good. It didn't feel like so like with Near Dark to me, I was like laughing at the length. Like it was too long and it wasn't good like that good to me.
Right.
This is really solid. So even though it's very long and you're like, wow, this is going on for a while, the quality of the fighting that they're doing is so good that even when you but there's a few points that even when you think it's over and they get like a moment where they're like like leaning over and then they they
It's
engage again.
Peter Griffin and the chicken fighting.
Yes. Oh my gosh. They keep going for a long time. So after all of this, and they're all bloodied up and everything, Nada finally gets the sunglasses on Frank. And Frank immediately sees the alien people. And also another like flying saucer type drone.
Hmm.
John and Frank, friends again, walk down the street together, but they're both wearing the glasses now. Because Frank's like, oh shit. They rent a room at a local gross motel, I think. It was like a
Yeah.
boarding house or something.
Yeah,
Um,
probably.
one or the other. Frank says they need to find the people who made the glasses. So now Frank is involved. He didn't want to be, but he's involved. Frank runs into Gilbert at the motel slash boarding house. And it turns out that Gilbert is on the side of like, I'm gonna just call them like the woke people for all intents and purposes. He tells them there's a resistance meeting that night and just to make sure nobody follows them. So he's inviting them to come down, join the fight. John and Frank go to the meeting. They are armed, and so is the guard at the door who lets them in. The room has a bunch of people in it. A lady who knows Frank has them take off their sunglasses and gives them new contact lenses, which do the same thing. They are supposed to cause less interference and not give them those headaches that they were getting from those real cool sunglasses they were sporting before. Gilbert is letting them know that the cops are looking for them. He does also say that most of the cops are human, but they have been told that this resistance group is a bunch of commies trying to bring down the government. So that's why they're
Mm-hmm.
kind of hunting them. They've been told something different than what's actually occurring. Frank is wondering what these beings want. He's like, why, what's going on? Like, what do they want from us? And Gilbert says it's basically in their best interest because Earth is like a place that's developing and they want to just drain the resources and move on because that's what they do. While they're having this conversation, John's loading up a bag with weapons as someone else explains nearby that the aliens use the watch as a two-way radio, which we know. We already know that. But we also learn there's some kind of button that opens a portal
Mm-hmm.
or makes them like disappear or teleport elsewhere. So that's important information. Gilbert is still kind of speaking to the crowd. He's troubled by the lack of people at their meeting. He says they need to be more careful, evading detection, and their goal is to shut down the signal that's keeping these everyone else asleep. One of the resistance members works at a TV station, and he's about to say where he believes the signal is coming from, but he's interrupted by Holly. Holly is back, who says the TV station that he was about to say is not the correct place. Their signals are clean. She checked or whatever. So Nada sees her and kind of half smiles. And he goes
Mm.
over to talk to her, which is crazy because she assaulted him.
Right.
Um, but she's like, "Are you okay? I'm sorry," from when she, smashed him in the head. And she apologizes. It looks like they're having a moment,
Which
but
is weird.
it is weird. It's
It it's
it's very
it's
strange.
because I'll be honest, if I'm in Holly's position, I'm not going to be friendly or apologize to the person who carjacked me and came into my house to the point where I had to hit him in the head with a bottle. If I'm John or Nada, I'm not going to be friendly to the person who beat me in the head with a wine bottle and sent me flying out her window. Like, there's no reason for me to even when she came in, he kind of smiled and said to Frank, I gotta go talk to somebody. Like that line where a man sees a woman that he really wants and hasn't seen for a minute and goes
Yeah.
over. Like if they were at a seedy bar, he'd have brought her a drink over and be like, haven't
Yeah.
seen you in a while. Like,
I love
ugh.
your man voice, first of all. That's amazing. But my toxic trait is if the man looks like Roddy Piper, then I'm like, I'm so sorry. Do you want to hang out? Like that's my problem.
Well,
So
you wouldn't have hit him in the head with a wine bottle.
if I thought I was in danger,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah, but I think like when he would have came to your car, you'd have been like, oh, get in.
I'm like, let's do a Bonnie and Clyde. I'm down. Yeah, maybe. It's possible. I don't know. We'll see when it happens. I guess. I guess. Um, so as they're having this moment, the wall explodes behind them, and people come in and just start shooting at them. Many people fall, meaning they get they get clipped, including Gilbert. But John and Frank get out of there in time, as does Holly, but they have gone in separate directions, so they're separated. While Frank and John, or Nada, again, are taking fire in an alley, they accidentally hit a button on the watch, opening a portal that they escape into. They wind up in what looks like a big underground hallway. Nada says as much. He said he believes they're under the city. Nada and Frank stumble upon a formal event that is full of aliens in their finery, and some humans as well. A guy they knew from before, I guess from the shanty town, like I didn't even 100% recognize him,
Maybe.
but he knew
Yeah.
both of them, so I don't know. He's like, I didn't know you guys were recruited.
Oh,
And
you know
base,
what? I think
what?
he was from the construction site.
Okay,
Maybe. Yeah.
maybe. He's from somewhere that escapes us. So it's one of those two places. Um, basically, he's alluding to the fact that if you join up with this whatever is happening, you basically become rich. Like you get paid off, your life is comfortable, you don't have to worry about any of the nonsense going on. Um, And then he's like, have you guys seen the whole facility? And he just gives them a tour without even checking any of their credentials because he's dope. He shows them this weird space teleportation system, and you can see that's where like aliens are coming and going from. Like they just go to another planet.
Hmm.
Um, he also then shows them the TV station setup where they broadcast the signal from, not directly in there, but that's like where the news portion of it that's pumping it out is recorded. And two guards there ask them for their access cards. Nada and Frank just shoot them immediately, and take those guys out, scaring the crap out of their tour guide, who tells them he thinks the signal is actually coming from the roof. And again, he's making a case for them joining up with the aliens. He's like, "You're gonna live the good life." Um, he was like, "Don't you guys understand? There's no countries anymore. These creatures can do whatever they want." Um, so basically join up. But at this point, he's also kind of distracting them, and he hits his watch and he escapes out of there with his own kind of teleportation. So John and Frank, Nada rather, seeing that everyone in the studio is an alien, open fire and make their way through the offices trying to get to the roof, blasting away whenever they run into people who try to stop them. They run across Holly on their way. John takes her with them as they continue on. And as Nada leads the way, so he's in front of Holly and Frank, we see Holly pull a gun and she appears to shoot Frank as the scene cuts away to Nada on the roof.
She's a
Nada,
jerk.
she is a jerk. I don't like her eye makeup either. But Nada is looking out over this rooftop and he calls kind of over his shoulder for Frank and he's like, "Are you clear?" Holly replies, saying she is. When he turns, she is pointing a gun at him. She tells him he can't win, like, don't fight it. A few helicopters appear and tell him to drop his weapon, which he does, but a moment later he pulls a pistol out of his sleeve, taking out Holly, and then shooting the device that's putting out the signal. He gets shot by the helicopter guys and gives them the finger as he lays dying. The signal is disrupted, and everyone starts to wake up, quote unquote.
Hmm.
Everyone's seeing that the people on the news and around them are hideous alien skeleton looking creatures with giant popping out eyeballs. And that's how the movie ends. That's it. That's the whole movie.
The end.
The ends. Um, those aliens were it's a very interesting take. Like I haven't really seen anything that looks exactly like
Yeah, neither have I.
those before. I think John Carpenter did a solid job creating them. Um, what I think is interesting, so we know, and you have the name of the short story this is based on, is like 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that. Is that right?
Yeah. At the I did have it, but
I think that's it. So basically, John Carpenter read this short story called, I think, 3 o'clock in the morning, which you can correct me on whenever you find it.
yeah.
Um,
8 o'clock in
and
the morning.
all right, 8 o'clock in the 8 o'clock in the morning. I was close. And he wrote this whole screenplay based off that short story. What I find very interesting, and it's very apparent because if you really look at this movie kind of beyond just like the surface of like it's an interesting science fiction, it's very smart. Like he says that he kind of developed this based on his displeasure with the government around the time. So this is Ronald Reagan era, right? He was displeased
Yep.
with the Reaganomics and all of those things. Like he had clearly very strong opinions based on the way that this was drafted and put together with all of the kind of like subliminal messages um and programming. So it's very intelligent past the surface. What I find
Yeah.
interesting again is that I love that Roddy Piper was in this. Um how most of his lines were one lines here and there. You know what I mean? He was
Hmm.
great physically. It's not hard on the eyeballs if you get my drift. Um And I don't think there's anything wrong with that per se. It's just something that I always notice when I watch this back is that he really does have mostly one-liners, but it works.
Yeah,
It's
I
fine.
mean, it's interesting because I walked up, I had some earphones on and walked away from the computer while this was playing. And I also noticed that there was a lot of silence in this movie.
Yeah.
There's not a lot there, like through almost like the first two acts of this movie, there is not a lot of dialogue at all.
Yeah.
It's just, cinematography going on, and
Yeah.
you see people, they're showing you the shanty town, they're showing you the fighting, they're showing you people trying to recover stuff, but there's not a lot of talking. So it's interesting, like, when John is saying something, it is like maybe four words,
Yeah.
5 words here and there, and then there's
Mama
like a
don't like
long gap,
tattletales. Yeah.
right?
Um, yeah. No, so it's interesting when you look into it, even like the stories, the facts, whatever. It's a good cast. It's gross aliens. It's on the nose. And I feel like it can be probably related to at any period of time, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. I think this is a solid movie. Like it's not my favorite movie I've ever seen, but it
Right.
doesn't drag for me at points. Um, and those stunts were really good. Like,
Right.
um, but yeah, I don't know. So what are your thoughts and feelings about They
Well,
Live?
I'll give you my usual fun facts first, and
Fun facts,
then
yes.
I'll then I'll go into that. So the budget for this movie was 3 million approximately,
Well,
but the movie did gross 13 million at the box office, and they're very happy about that, considering it was a low budget film.
yeah, sure,
Um, and it got more popularity over the years, and it's one of John Carpenter's most iconic films.
sure.
Um, and it did get mixed reviews. Some critics praised it for its satirical commentary on consumerism, capitalism, and media control.
Right.
Um, and like they like the sunglasses concept of and the subliminal messaging. And of course, people love that bubblegum line, which
It's
was
so good.
it was Roddy Piper's line anyway. He had it for some wrestling promos, and John Carpenter was like, "I like that. Put it in."
I want to
And
go find that. I want to find it so bad. Like when it was in, he used it in his original um form because as a reminder, if you're not a wrestling person, he's regarded as one of the greatest heels of all time. All time.
yeah,
So he was good at cutting promos, but also the thing about a lot of wrestling is those they have a lot of one-liners kind of put together. Like if you go back and you look at like Ultimate Warrior or like Ric Flair or your people like that or like Marty Jannetty even and they talk about um oh who else? Wait, Jimmy Hart. I love Jimmy Hart. Do you remember Jimmy Hart?
yeah,
He was like
vaguely.
one of the managers and he had like a megaphone.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's one promo I remember. I can't remember who cut it, but it was like from Austin to Boston, from Maine to Spain. Like it's always like just consecutive one-liners and in the heat of the moment. But I think he did solid considering that. And I love that that was his own line.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder if there were any others, but that one, because it's the most famous line, that's the one that, it's definitely his.
Right.
Um, So while there were some positive things, there was also some negative things. Critics found the film's tone to be very uneven with a mix of serious and B-movie action. They said the acting by Roddy Piper was polarizing because some people really liked his charisma and how he portrayed like the regular working class man, while others found that his performance was very stiff and unnatural, and he didn't seem like he was a real actor. Which
How
I mean,
dare they?
I mean, technically he isn't. So, I mean, while there's elements of acting in wrestling, it's very over the top and
Sports
dramatic.
entertainment, yes.
Right. Soap operas for men, basically, what I've heard. Um,
Yeah,
and yeah, people said that the pacing was thinly developed and well, the pacing was bad and the characters were developed very thinly because you don't get to really know any of these characters at
that's true.
all. And so that was bad. But for Rotten Tomatoes, it got a score of 86, with an audience score of 79%. Metacritic gave it a 55 out of 100. and Ebert gave it a 2.5 out of 4 stars, criticizing its execution, calling it an ambitious B movie. But it's
Hmm.
funny because uh they had some beef. Like Siskel and Ebert had beef with this movie, and they're parodied in this movie at some point. I don't remember exactly where.
Really?
Yeah,
Hmm.
I read that in passing. I didn't write it down, but like yeah, apparently it was like Siskel wrote a very scathing like review of this movie, like trashing it. And so they were like, "Oh, okay." And so they're parodied in this movie. I think they're aliens somewhere.
They're like they're
Um
part of it.
yeah.
That's funny. I was just trying
So
to find the I
oh,
was
the
trying to
thing.
see if I could find Roddy Piper actually saying that outside of the movie.
Uh
I wanted to find it in like one of the actual promos. Wait, wait. No, that's not it. That's too late. I just something just popped up that was King of the Ring 1994, but this was 1988, right? So
yes.
that's not
So
gonna be the thing. Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, other things like, they talk about like the obey imagery and um it had low budget charm, like the charm of it was great.
Yeah.
And actually people now, like nowadays, regard Roddy Piper's performance as very fitting for the gritty tone of the movie.
No.
Considering like that fight scene is iconic in action cinema, actually. Not even
Yeah.
considered horror, but for action. But with that said, because I don't have to go on with the rest of these fun facts. It's not a lot, but it's
If they're
fine.
really fun, feel free to share them.
No, I think we actually hit a lot of them because it was like we talked about the propaganda earlier. We talked
Hmm.
about um actually, there's a hidden political message because, yeah, John Carpenter stated that the film was a direct critique of the socio-political climate of the 1980s, particularly the widening gap between the rich and the poor, and described it as a documentary of the times, which is interesting because it feels, like I said, very,
Like a
very
documentary
much,
of our times.
yeah, it feels like it's today.
Yeah.
But how I felt about this movie. I didn't think I had seen this movie until I started watching it. And then I said, "Oh, I have seen this movie."
She remembered.
Right?
Yep.
Right? And so like I told Megan earlier, the first time I watched it, I literally just watched it for what it was. Just
No.
a horror movie about like aliens trying to take over, blah blah blah. I didn't really pay attention to the subtext of this movie at all. But on a second watch, realizing it's a second watch, um, I
We got there.
actually,
Yeah.
right? I actually do like how smart the movie is because it is a really good example of our real media of today. Like there's so much there's so many subliminal messages and
No.
things, and there's a lot of things that are hidden that we can't see. And people talk about, oh, woke culture, blah blah blah, but there are things that we do need to be awake for at this
Right.
point. And so I just thought it was really a movie ahead of its time. Even though, you know, it
Reoccurring
was
themes, but
right.
still, yeah.
It was the same back then. Um, the acting in the movie was okay. I didn't necessarily love it. Also, I do agree with the character development. There was no character development. You
None.
you
There's none.
like honestly, every single person in this movie could have died, and I would have been like, which actually happened. So
That's true. It did happen. Well,
yeah,
also, we said, so I sometimes I check in about details, like we might talk before we start recording, and I was like, he's wearing a wedding ring throughout this entire movie. Do they ever touch on that? Because I was like, surely they were like, I had to leave my wife in Missouri because blah. And she's like, no. So really, there was no reason. Like, it could have just been from real life. That's something that we both were kind of thinking that maybe it was just his ring from like his marriage in the real world and he just didn't take it off. Like, we don't know
right,
because
which it
there
was.
never was anything
Right.
about his character before except when he first came into town and they were like, were you employed before? And he said he worked in Colorado or something for 10 years.
But
And
that's
that's it.
it.
That's all we got. We don't know
Yeah.
anything else. But
So
with that being said, they wanted him to be like you were saying, like Nada, right? So his name is like John Nada, like John Smith. They wanted him to be like an everyman. So maybe that's the reason they didn't give him any details because they did give Frank some details. Like, I have a
Right.
wife and kids. I used to be like bad. I'm trying to just be good and walk the line because I need to stay with my family. So they did give other people a little bit, but they really gave him nothing.
Yeah.
So,
So, I mean, it's just so you can put yourself in that position.
right,
And it's interesting because Frank is he's polarized against John because John is the person who's looking for answers. He's searching for answers.
right.
He's actively looking to see what's going on, while we see Frank is the representation of the rest of the world or the rest of
Yeah,
the community who's like, I don't want to see what's going on. I don't
right.
care. I'm going to
That's
keep
none of
my
my
head down.
business. Right.
And in fact, he does say I like to just stay on the white line or something like that. And then
Yes.
Nada says, well, if you drive on the white line, that's not really safe, or you walk on the white line, it's not really
I
safe.
really like that line too. When he
Yeah,
said, I remember he said, I like to walk the white line. He said, the white line's in the middle of the road. That's a good place to get hit. And I was
right.
like,
Yeah,
oh, that's a good
yeah,
one too. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
So, I mean, and that tells you where Frank is, because Frank is basically like a fence rider. He's like, I'm not trying to be good or bad.
right,
I used to be bad. I'm just trying to mind my business. I got a
right,
family at home, you know. But but again, there's still not enough development for anybody to for you to care.
right.
Which is it's fine. This it's fine.
Yeah.
The movie isn't about the characters. The movie is actually about the
The
message.
message. I
And
agree.
so I'm fine with that. I thought it was I thought it was a decent movie.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a movie that I reach for or that I probably would be like, oh, this is on, let me watch it. Like if I saw it was on, I'd probably still change the channel. But but it's not a bad movie.
No,
So
no. I mean,
yeah.
I saw it, I think I told you before, two of my friends and I went to see it as a Fathom event because it was on the big screen. And I think it's fun sometimes because, like, I was born in 87, so I didn't start going to the movies until a little bit later. So to see a lot of the movies that I enjoy on a big screen, whereas I didn't have the opportunity the
Right.
first time around. So it was kind of fun to see those freaky aliens on that big ass screen and Roddy Piper on the big screen. And I agree that his acting is not amazing. I agree with that. But because I love Roddy Piper, I love him anyway. But I can still acknowledge that I was like, it's not
Right.
amazing, but it's also solid. Like one thing I was saying, like the lines, because there was like one, I don't know if it was a line or one time where he like dropped his head back where it looked a little like not great, right? Like he could have, it looked a little stiff.
Hmm.
But generally, like his physicality, like is natural at acting. He wasn't super like it didn't seem like he was super green or didn't know what he was doing or whatever.
Right.
And I think that can be attributed to being a public figure in like wrestling and stuff because that does require an element of acting. Um, but like,
Yeah.
but the rest of it, like, he wasn't amazing, but I still love him. I just do, you know?
I honestly, what I appreciate about Roddy Piper's performance are the times where he's not talking.
Yeah.
And I'm not even trying to be funny about this because
I love
people
when he
like,
doesn't talk. Yeah,
right?
no, I love him.
But I feel like when he actually is just walking, observing, even when he has the glasses on and he's like finding out what's going on,
Yeah,
his reactions when he's not talking are genuine. Like I
yeah.
honestly feel like that is a real person and how a
He's
real person would
believable.
react. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Really gives me any man USA,
Yeah,
you
in his
know.
Wrangler jeans.
Right, right. So that is always really interesting for me because when he starts talking, he takes me out of that because they are those punchy one-liners through most of the movie.
Yeah.
Like my favorite part of the movie is when the alien lady bumps into him and he's like to the other lady that's a human, he's like, "You're okay, but you're fucking ugly." And it's like the way he delivers it is so comical. It's like polarizing from how he acts when he's not talking. But
Yeah,
um,
I agree.
but I
Well,
still I love that though.
I do still attribute that to like when they do wrestling, right? It's live. It's live. And when they're saying the things they're saying, it's so different than a movie than being like, okay, cut, okay, back to one. Okay,
Right.
deliver it again, you know? So I find, and if you have you ever watched, have you ever seen him in his natural element? Have you ever seen him in wrestling?
Yes.
When he speaks on the mic, he is way more natural at wrestling. And I think maybe that has something to do with it because you're not repeating the same thing over and over again. You
Right.
don't have a bunch of people being like, we could do that better, do it again. It's just more natural. So
Right.
I think
There's no
he's
pressure at that point.
right. I think he's more at ease because that's why, because there is kind of like a discrepancy almost, and I definitely get what you mean about how his physical acting is versus when he just is delivering lines. Like there is a weird kind of like a little bit of a disconnect. Um,
Even like in the very beginning when he first meets Frank and Frank tells him about the shanty town and then Frank walks away and Roddy or John is like just silently following him
right.
and then Frank is like I don't like people following me and then John's reply is well I'm not going to just follow somebody I don't know. And so but the way he delivers it again it's like him following him seems so natural but then for him to drop that line it was like funny to me because I'm like,
Yeah.
that's interesting because he's right. I wouldn't follow anybody I don't know, so I need to see where you're
Yeah.
going first.
But it does sound like stiff or like someone
Yes.
who's like super socially awkward or like something like that. So
Yeah.
I agree 100% with all that. I think that's very um to the point. And yeah, it's like it's interesting too because I don't think I've seen a ton of movies where someone's acting is both so good and not so good in the same piece, you
Mhm.
know? So I find it interesting for that reason as well. Um yeah, and those creatures are ugly, dude.
They are.
They really are ugly. I know. Well, okay. I like that.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
and one of the best scenes of the movie is the very end scene. There's a lady having sex, and she looks down, and the person she's having sex with, because now the veil has been removed, she looks down, and the guy is an alien.
I think I missed that because I think I was noting. Oh my
That is
God.
it's the very last scene of the movie. She's on top of him and the TV is on. And on the TV there's somebody doing an interview and they're alien, but the person
Um,
interviewing them is human. And so the person's like, "What?" Like the alien doesn't realize he's now
he's
seen.
exposed, yeah.
And she's looking at it while she's having sex with him and she looks down and she like her eyes go big because she realizes that she's riding an alien. He goes, "What's wrong, baby?"
You're like, that's not a good surprise. That's
No,
a bad surprise. Yeah.
no, but yeah, but that's the parting shot, and that is the other gratuitous topless nudity because she's
Yeah.
completely topless. So
I
there
mean,
you go.
I prefer the first one
Yeah,
personally.
but
Personally.
but I thought
But
that that was an interesting way to like end the movie.
it
After
is
it's been
comical though. Yeah,
right,
like
and but after it's been so heavy throughout. I mean,
yeah.
they bulldozed people's homes. They killed everybody in the
They're
movie
beating
that
a
we knew.
preacher.
They beat the preacher
Come
down
on.
to the ground.
Come on.
And then at the end you just see like titties and aliens. So I
It's
mean,
definitely an interesting way to close. I agree
it
with that.
is. It
All right.
is. Yeah.
Well, with that being said, because I think we've kind of talked about all the points, what are you gonna rate this movie? How many bloody axes are you gonna give it?
So like I said, I like the story. As far as the what it's trying to get out. The story itself, I'm mid on.
Yeah, yeah.
But the actual underlying message I really do appreciate and I like.
Yeah.
Like I said, the acting is okay. Cinematography is decent and everything
Yeah.
like that. Fight scene was awesome. Um,
Awesome.
I am giving this a 7. um, for those reasons. And I honestly, I think this movie is the message of this movie is rather timeless. And
Yeah.
so, you could watch it. I'm sure 50 years from now, somebody could put this on and we'd be going through the same thing. Um,
Yeah.
so, I really appreciate that. So I'm giving it a 7. What about you?
You know what's so funny is that I was going back and forth a little bit, and I'm gonna go with my gut instinct, even though I was thinking at the last minute if I should change it. But I'm gonna give it a 7 too, actually. I don't
Hey,
know if this is our first time doing something exactly the same.
maybe.
Um, because it's like you're saying, like the story in and of itself, decent, the underlying message even better, the fight scenes, fantastic, really good. Shirtless Roddy Piper, I want to give that an invisible extra whole point, so that would invisible 8. And Keith David did a great job. John Carpenter, love it. I got bored of his same song over and over again. I'm going to be honest, it wasn't
Yeah,
my favorite thing that he's ever done. Um, but it's a good movie, solid. I've seen it before. I'm gonna see it again at some point, definitely. So many good one-liners. Um, but still a little weirdness in the acting. So it's like I can't take it up all the way, but I like it. It's good and it's solid. And
I agree.
we I love Roddy for all of his work he's ever done and everything. Um, Even in the Piper's Pit with his little kilt, he's precious and adorable. And may he rest in peace because he's no
Yes.
longer with us. But yeah, so sevens all around. I like it. I'm
Yep.
good with that. I'm good with that. All right. Well, do you have any other facts or fun things you want to throw in, or are we all done?
We're ready for our outro.
We're ready. We're ready.
Alrighty. Well, thanks for joining us for another extraterrestrial episode of the Horror Ghouls podcast. That's such a hard word for me to say. And
Extraterrestrial. Also,
right?
you don't like ET,
I
just in
don't.
case no one remembers that.
Yeah, I hate that movie.
She doesn't like ET.
But
Okay.
we hoped you like diving into the subversive world of They Live, where sunglasses reveal the truth and the fight for freedom is anything but subtle.
Mhm.
So if you found yourself rooting for nada, questioning the media you consume, or simply enjoying a good old alien smackdown, we'd love to hear your thoughts. So reach out to us on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram at The Horror Ghouls and let us know how you'd handle a world covertly run by aliens and full of subliminal control. Because
Oh,
I don't know how I would feel about that. I would want the glasses because I want to see who I'm talking to. I want to see the messages.
same. But then
Yeah.
also, what do you do about it? That's tough.
I'm probably gonna walk the white line.
I'm gonna walk the middle of the road.
Yeah, that's me. I'm down the
That's a
middle of the road.
that's a big problem,
It is.
man.
It is.
Yeah.
But
Well,
don't,
that's
but
good
yeah.
food for thought. Let us know. Let us
It
know what you would
is.
do. Yep.
Definitely let us know. And don't forget to subscribe for more eye-opening discussions and cinema breakdowns. So, until next time, stay spooky, carry bubblegum and kick ass, and remember, obey the urge to binge all the Horror Ghouls podcast episodes.
That's one you definitely should obey.
Subliminal messaging.
I wish we could have like a weird. Do you remember those old school hypnosis things they would show on
Yes.
TV? So I know we don't have it. Just picture it.
Just pretend. There you
Just
go.
you're getting very sleepy.
Yes.
Like and subscribe. Thank you so much. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.